So MongoDB is another machine that is a Linux machine and is a database. It gives us more practice with databases. The more you can get practice with databases, the better, because most sites, most web applications on the back end, it is a database. So if we are pen testers, or we are just administrators, infrastructure engineers, you are going to be supporting these kind of systems. So it's important to know where the vulnerabilities could be and what to look for in these systems, and how really how to patch them. And so that's what MongoDB is going to be all about. So go ahead and get started, get connected, whether you're using the VPN or you're using PwnBox. Again, I'm using PwnBox. I like to just spin it up in the browser, but it works just as well to connect and download a VPN key and set up the VPN connection from one of your VMs or your computer that you're on right now. I do highly recommend always trying to follow along the best you can without just watching. You're only about, I would say you're only hitting about the 50% of the potential that you could be learning by just watching me as I go through this. And I will make mistakes on screen, as you may see. I try to leave those in there, not because I'm being lazy, but because I just want you to see that nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. People in the industry with a job, they make mistakes. So you should too. It's just to give you courage to do it, right? Because that's a big thing for a lot of people starting out, is like, and I just spawned the machine waiting on the IP to come up, is a lot of times they don't want to click that button because they don't know what it's going to do, or they just stay in this tutorial loop where you're just watching and watching and watching but never doing. And so you'll have all the perspective in the world, you'll have all the opinions in the world, but not the skill set to back it up. I don't want you to be that. I want you to be the person that you've got the opinions because you've broken it, you've tried it, you've disagreed, you've tried with what you disagree with, and now you have like an informed opinion, right? And now you have experience. Like this, when you do it, when you get on Hack the Box, or you get on a platform, or you build projects at home, you actually worked through it, you struggled, which there's a lot of value in the struggle. You are building relevant experience that you could put on a resume. And more importantly, that you could use in the job. And if you're in the interview, you can communicate your experience. For some people, I think this is why they find interviews so hard, because they're like, I don't know what these people want. They want people with some kind of experience to talk about, instead of just like what they observed others do, right? It's like, what did you do? And this is why I do like sites like this. I'm not saying it's the only way to learn, but I'm saying it's a great way to learn. So I'm going to stop yapping and we'll get into it. I'm going to, I have the IP here, putting that in RAM, and then I'm going to move this over to another screen. That way we're not, you can see what I'm doing as I go through it. So we're going to ping, right? Remember, ping. Well, got to type ping and then paste. So that tells us the target's up, so we're good to go on that. The first question is, how many TCP ports are open on the machine? That's the first question. How can we find that? How do we do it? So we can do our default Nmap scan, right? I like to do -c -pn, and then let's paste. Control V as well. I'm okay with y'all like judging my workflow too. Please judge my workflow in the comments. Like, you might see me pop Grok up or Cursor or some kind of AI assisted tool as well, because those are tools that I believe you should be using. So, and I use them, right? I mean, Grok has pretty much replaced Google search for me. So we're just seeing SSH. We may have to do a more granular scan. So I'm gonna do nmap -p- which Nmap, the network mapper tool. If you don't know what Nmap is, you may want to go back to the beginning video in this series. It's a playlist on YouTube on my channel called The Beginner's Guide to Ethical Hacking and Cybersecurity. So go to the playlist and start with number 1 if Nmap is something you don't know about. But no, it's a network mapping tool. It'll try to look for open ports on a machine, which, remember what those ports are, is they're assigned to some kind of service, a application that's listening for requests. That service is going to service those requests, and we usually find our way into a system through an open port for a specific application. So if we're scanning for TCP and UDP ports, we're looking for more than just SSH. Port 22, I'll say, is SSH, which is secure shell, and from the command line you can SSH into a system and access its command line remotely for remote administration purposes, which you would think is a juicy target for anyone who sees that open. But typically SSH is locked down with behind public key authentication, or key. I said public key. I didn't mean to. Key-based authentication, which is a public key, private key pair that you have to have. So the system, let's say it's a Linux system that you're going to SSH into, and you type the password. And even if you were able to get the password, it says you need the key. Your key would need to be on that system. There would need to be a footprint on that system so the system can authorize your device. I think the file is actually called authorized keys, that you would put your key in, so that instead of just relying on password alone, the destination system is also verifying your key, so that it's more than a password. It's a form of multi-factor authentication, really. I've seen a lot of deployments where when you have key-based authentication enabled, you turn off the password because, many IT professionals in this day and age are trying to delete passwords, like in the sense that they're not the most secure method anymore. They're annoying. Like, how do we get away from password? Where's the passwordless future? Plus, we know databases get hacked. We're talking about databases now. Hashes get cracked because your password is saved on a system in a hash form, really. And if it was a weak password and that hash was leaked, the hash could get cracked. As long as the hacker is running cracking operations using something like Hashcat and a GPU cluster and against wordless, they're going to eventually crack a weak passwords, right? Low-hanging fruit. So, why not have no low-hanging fruit, right? But it is ultimately always better to have multi-factor authentication, because if you have password and key-based authentication, it's a double whammy. They would need both, your password and your key, right? So, which is, unlikely that they would have those. It can get stolen though, just so you know. It's not impossible. It's just harder to hack. It's always about making things harder. And so I do rant. Please yell at me in the chat, in the comments, and throw tomatoes if I'm yapping too much. That's just part of how I teach. Some people appreciate it. Some people are like, I need the answers. I want you to hurry through. So what was the question in the first place? We're on task 1. I ran this command, this Nmap command. We're looking for versions. We're looking for every port, the -p-. And let's skip down here, and we talked about SSH. We know it's not a target on Hack the Box typically. SSH is normally not a target. I'm not saying don't try, but you may be wasting your time. So 27017, Mongo database, 368. So we have a vulnerability, maybe. We don't know. We just know we can see the database service listening on this port. Typically, that's not good. Typically, you want a system that would be, a database management system. You want that service, so the service being, 27017, MongoDB, is listening on an IP that is reachable from us, which is like, this is kind of simulating if we were, targeting a website. You'll see that on Hack the Box is like a full-blown application is you're hitting the website or the box from the front end, which is the web page, and you're trying to find a way onto the underlying box or even into the database. Typically, a database management system should not be reachable on its public IP, right? Which technically this is not a public IP, but I'm saying when you're on Hack the Box, you're typically simulating attacking an externally facing application and working your way in, because that's generally what an attacker's trying to do. They're working from the outside in. They don't already have an in, right? So what are we looking for here? What are we thinking about? What's my methodology? What I would look at here is, the version immediately. So I'm MongoDB 368. We can Google. We could also say vulnerability. And this is where, this is like the less attractive and sexy part of the, doing hacking and penetration testing is just research. And some of you might love it, but what gets exciting is when you're seeing the action happen. But what are we looking at here? How do we access it? Is there a vulnerability? We know, this is the thing about Hack the Box, it's there's a vulnerability because it's Hack the Box, right? In real life, it's you kind of gotta be stubborn like that too. You gotta assume, it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable. And, especially if you're doing penetration testing. So input validation. Let's see if there's exploits out there. Looking for public exploits. Exploit DB. (223), that's not the number, so that is not what we're looking for. You're seeing write-ups here. We could try to connect to MongoDB. So connecting to Mongo. Could do this too, right? I like showing this because it's kind of newer, a newer approach. So I'm asking Grok, how do I connect to MongoDB 368 from the command line? The thing I do like about Grok, and I guess this does make me lazy a little bit, is like it will give me an explanation and it'll give me the commands, and it often works. So it's like researching it for me, which is like, dude, does your brain work anymore? It does, you know. You can go through and read this as well, but it's like a pretty smart intelligence giving you a breakdown. It's getting that faster than I would have, because I'm doing this live, right? Like I haven't done this box before. So to connect to MongoDB server from the command line using the Mongo shell, which is the interactive JavaScript interface for MongoDB, you need to have the Mongo shell installed on your system. It's recommended to use a shell version that matches your server for compatibility. Okay. Connecting with custom port. Okay. So it doesn't have any context. So I'm on a Linux system and the MongoDB is at the IP. Oops. Do it like this. Hey, dude, you're script kitty. Yep, I'm a script adult. Anything to save time. I'm on a Linux system and the MongoDB is at the IP. To connect to the MongoDB 368 instance at the remote IP from your Linux system command line using Mongo shell, ensure the shell is installed. So we are in a Debian-based system, being in Pwnbox, but depending on what system you're connecting from, you'll want to translate the instructions that we're doing there. I'm just assuming you're in something Debian-based. So copying that. It might already be there. So let me type Mongo. Yeah, Mongo. Probably not there. Yum. Let's see, Grok. Oh yeah, no. It meant this. I don't know why I did yum. We don't have yum as a package manager on here. Unable to locate. That's where you wonder, did I copy the whole thing? Yeah. So here's where it gets truly lazy. I gotta build some like command line tool for Pwnbox to like log into my Grok session. You could do this with like a Claude code. Drop Claude code on Pwnbox and just go to town on these. Would it let you though? Or would it throw up all these errors, you know, because you're violating? You would have to tell Claude in the prompt, the system prompt, like tell it we're on Pwnbox learning IT and cybersecurity skills and unhack the box. Otherwise it'd be like, what are you trying? Like it'd be like, sorry, I can't help you with that. So it's having us get an older version. That is one thing with Grok. It does take a little while. It takes some time to think. But it does typically come back with something useful. So it's got us, we'll try it. Okay. We know wget is installed, which wget allows us to download files from the web through the command line. We go paste. All right, it's downloading it. All right, so it was there. I probably should just log into Grok in Pwnbox, so I don't have to keep doing this. Paste. It's extracting it. Here, I'll put it over here. I want y'all to see, but I also don't want to just cut Pwnbox in half like I just did. Yeah, it's right here. So now we're going to extract it, which we already did. Navigate to the bin directory where the MongoDB executable is located. Let's do that. I'm even CD. I'm copying the change directory. We're going to listen to Grok here. There's got to be some kind of setting I can do in Windows that makes it stay. I'll just put it over here. So it's having us do executing that binary. Bin is binary, which is the bin directory is, with most things, is typically where the executable files are. So we're executing MongoDB, the client side command line utility, and we're using the host flag to target that IP. And it says error while loading shared libraries. Yeah, so maybe custom port. What was the port? This is where notes are good, so you want to pop notes open and drop things like this in there. I'm telling Grok right now, it's on port 0, I think it's 27017. Yeah, 27017. Yeah, so it can't even open that. Let's see what's the... We need this. So we're gonna need to install So what we learned from that there is that is MongoDB's default port. So we wouldn't have to specify a custom port. So this client will attempt to connect to a custom port. So our error, I'm really just taking, I'm getting ahead of myself. The error is it's not actually executing the MongoDB client because it's missing this library, which Grok did anticipate potentially this needing to be a thing. That's why it provided a troubleshooting step, which was to ensure your system has the necessary runtime libraries, which one is to sudo apt install libssl100. So it says has no install. It's not available, but is referred to by another package. This may mean that the package is missing, has been obsoleted, or is only available from another source. So we could tell Grok this, right? So it's saving us time. You know, the other thing is like look at the Hack the Box write-up, but I'm trying, I have those, I always have one ready to go if it's like a retired machine. Judge me all you want, but I always have a write-up ready to go in case I just hit a wall on everything. And I'm so thankful for these LLMs because that happens, I don't want to sound like cocky, but it happens rarely now because of how good the LLMs get and just are good at researching for me. So I always have something else to try. I'm rarely ever completely stuck now. And that's a weird thing, right? Like I think, and I'm just being completely transparent, like throughout my career, like you run into problems where you just feel stuck. Like you got to go to bed and sleep on it. And while that still does happen, I think it happens far less now. I'm unblocked quicker because I can even learn systems that I don't know faster because I'm like, hey, Grok or Claude, what is this? So it has us. Okay, so Grok did respond. It says to wget the latest patched version of the package. So we're going to try that. Paste. Okay. And then install it. It said if it complains about dependencies, run apt install -f. But now what we can do is go back to trying this. And it worked. Grok wins again. So we're connected to the database. How do we know? Because the prompt. So I'm telling Grok I'm connected to the database. And I will say you don't want to use, I will say you probably don't want to use Grok on a real engagement like this. Just because, you know, you may be pasting in like information protected under an NDA. But when it comes to learning, this is fine, right? Why I keep telling Grok, and on an engagement, don't provide any customer-specific information, so you may be able to keep your language broad, redacting anything identifying your client. And I'm talking about doing a pen test. But you can... you can use some broad wording, but I like to keep the LLM in the know because it's a good way to take notes too. Because if it's helped you through a problem, almost like a real human, keep giving it context. Because let's say at the end of you fixing the problem alongside, the AI tool you're using, if it's an LLM chatbot, and you solve it together and you've kept it in the know, it's kept you in the know, it's faster than me. It's faster than most people. So you could be like, okay, can you help me start to write a guide on this? And as soon as you throw that in there, it'll like write you a guide. And so, I don't know. This is controversial. I promise you people are going to be like, dude, you're lazy. I promise you, we're in a better world because of it. There's going to be a lot more documentation that gets written because of this. This approach and this new kind of methodology that you could take to note taking. You do have to get over the stigma though of like, did you do it or did the LLM? And you have to be careful not to just copy and paste and not understand what is going on. That's why I'm explaining with y'all. And I'm encouraging it because I know a lot of y'all are probably beginners. A very advanced person would have left this video. I got a different video series for advanced people. That's coming. I got a different, whole track of skills and infrastructure as code stuff that you probably haven't done yet. Kubernetes stuff coming. CI/CD pipeline configuration and troubleshooting coming. But like for beginners, it's okay to do this. It's just you have to be careful that you're not just looking for the answer alone, but that you're understanding what's going on. That's why I'm trying to explain as best as possible as we go what just happened, right? So it's going to have us list the databases, right? What's next? List the databases. So welcome to MongoDB shell. We're connected. Show DBMS. There's an admin. There's config, local. So we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go pull up what the next task is. So we actually have the first answer. Sometimes you can treat these starting point machines like a normal active machine on Hack the Box, and you're breezing through it, and it's like, wait, hold on a second, there were tasks, and that's fine. I'm just in this series. I wanna make sure that we're together trying to do the same thing. You could be like, dude, I'm gonna just breeze past you and do it. So, how many TCP ports are open on the machine? I think it was 2. Yeah, I just put 2. I was gonna copy and paste over. What service is running on the port 27017 on the remote host? We know that. We saw that. That is a MongoDB. And this is the service. Let's try it. Copy. Submit answer. The deed is done. What type of database is MongoDB? Is it SQL or no SQL? That's pretty easy. No SQL. We got that right. So some of them are like perspective building questions, which is good. What command is used to launch the interactive MongoDB shell from the terminal? Well, this seems relative to how you did it. Like, could it be this whole thing? So I'm going to copy and paste this whole thing in there. It probably won't be this. Even though that does work. Yeah, that answer is wrong, but that does work. So you can see some of, the limitations of relying too heavily on the tasks is that they have something very specific in mind. So it says, I'm clicking on the hint, and the hint says, try searching for the official MongoDB shell tool used for connecting to databases via the command line. I'll show you that right here. I mean, it's giving me a tip right here that it ends in an H. So they want us to know the officially supported way. There must be a very specific way they wanted us to do this, which would probably be in the write-up. Here, let me look it up. I'm going to Google. Because if I did this in Grok right now, Grok would tell us this command right here. Okay, so Gemini, which is in Google, the AI, I'll just show you. The AI summary, that's Gemini. Anytime you see the little diamond logo, that's Gemini, which is Google's AI. It says Mongosh. So it found that for us. And that might be the thing, because if we look at the tip and the answer. So Mongosh is another way to connect, which I did not know about. But now we know about. Learning. It's fundamental. So what is the command used for listing all the databases present on the MongoDB server? We did that. Show DBS. So I could just copy this right here. copy. We're pasting. That isn't correct. Do they not want... Oh, no, it says no need to include the trailing semicolon. Wonderful. You know, C3PO, he hits that. Wonderful. What is the command used for listing out the collections in the databases? How do we list out the collections, Grok? Grocky. Grockiana. Where'd you go? Show. It looks like Grok gave one command, show collections, which lists collections in the current database. I have to select one though. So let's say I do use admin, show collections. What is the command used for listing out the collections in a database? That's the one, show collections. We know that's the answer, but now this is where there's a little bit of challenge in it, and that is which database should we connect to sensitive information, maybe? Use sensitive. And then show collections. Flag. So it was in sensitive information. And I just guessed. Like I wasn't looking at the write-up or anything on that. I guessed because it just makes sense that a flag would be in sensitive information. So, of course, we know that a flag would not be... Hopefully you don't find a flag on a real system. Like it says flag. Flag is, again, supposed to represent sensitive data, right? That you would find. And your goal, technically, when you're doing a pen test, would not be to necessarily like display the sensitive information and read it, but to uncover the vulnerability and to find a way to demonstrate the impact of the vulnerability. And if you were able to exploit it, how far you could get, and hypothetically speaking, if you were a bad guy or gal, what could go wrong? Like, you do have to use your imagination to think about what would the attacker do, what have attackers done before, and you know, we know that they leak data, they sell the data on the dark web. So if they could get this far, and you know, this is really not, we didn't really hack, we just figured out what service was listening and we connected to that service. We didn't really exploit a vulnerability. I believe in this sense, the vulnerability we could consider is that there's no authentication, right? Which is a problem. So that would mean there was a misconfiguration vulnerability, most likely, where the admin or the database administrator that configured this database did not username, password, and username protect it, right? It didn't put any kind of authentication in front of that. It's no authentication is allowed because we just connected easily. That shouldn't be the case, but you would be surprised how many times you will come across a system that's just wide open. And usually that's just a misconfiguration. And how do misconfigurations happen? I do want to touch that because you're like, how could any self-respecting IT professional, whatever their title, do that? And usually it is not on purpose, right? And it is not because they are like super incompetent or something. It's most likely the case that they were just overworked, super tired, probably taking on entirely too much at once, and maybe in the middle of setting it up, they were disrupted. Now, this isn't a good excuse. I'm saying this should never happen, but the reason it does happen is most likely due to burnout. And I don't know if we talk enough about the impacts burnout can actually have on vulnerabilities being present. Because misconfiguration vulnerabilities happen all the time. They cause outages too, like the recent AWS outage. At least we're in October of 2025. If you're seeing this video later, you may have heard. You can look it up if we're in the future. But there was a huge outage, and it was caused by a misconfiguration. I'll say that much. In AWS. So rest in peace to US East 1. But no, they brought it back up. They got it back up, but it was a like day-long outage. And it was really a misconfiguration problem. And that's a human error. Humans are going to make errors, right? So like this could be a vulnerability you come across. So I wouldn't discount just trying the basics. Try to connect, right? Okay, so now what are we trying to do? We're trying to dump the contents of the document within the collection name flag. So this is what they recommend you do. Grok does. So Grok says query documents in a collection by doing db.collectionname.find. So here's what we're going to do. db. The name of the collection, which is flag. .find. And your flag's right here. So these are the results, the object ID, and the flag. So I'm copying this and I'm pasting it. And I recommend you do the same. Try not to like just pull answers off my video. You know, there's write-ups on this, so it's no secret. Oh, let's see, hold on a second. Did I get the whole thing? So is this the flag? I might have missed when I copied. Oh no, that's not the flag. Oh, it's asking for the command. I'm stupid. All right, so this is the command. I'm pasting that over. And this is the flag. So now the final task is the flag. I was skipping a task. So this is how we get through it. Mongo. And it makes the awesome "you've done it" chime.